All right, guys, I'm flying solo today. There are things that I just want to be between you and I. I have some controversial takes. I don't want any other opinions. Just you guys and myself. So, unless you've been living under a rock, you're well aware that the shooting of Renee Goode by ICE officer Jonathan Ross has dominated the media cycle. Now, neither of these people woke up the morning of January 7th intending to kill or die. Two people walked into a moment shaped by forces that are far larger than themselves, and two lives were destroyed. And this is what happens when politics becomes theater and law becomes symbolism. And until we learn the difference, more people will be sacrificed on this chessboard, while the players remain untouched. You know, when this incident happened, I was recording an episode of Actual Friends, which is a project that I do with Dave Rubin and Sage Steele and Dr. Drew. So I was put into a position of needing to react in the moment. But outside of that, I've stayed out of it. You know, people were getting hit with opinions, left, right, and center, and I didn't feel like we needed another one adding to the noise. You know, I'm also not an internet sleuth. I'm not going to decide who's guilty watching tires turn in slow motion on my phone. There are experts who will determine these things. And all the other stuff that people have taken to the internet with doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if two of Renee Goode's kids live with their dad. It doesn't matter. If Officer Ross called her a bad name after he shot her, none of that matters. There's literally only one legal question of relevance in this case. Did Officer Ross have a reasonable fear for his life at the moment he fired? That's it. Now, it could turn out that Renee Goode was fleeing and the officer could have moved out of the way. It could turn out that the officer reasonably believed she intended to hit and kill him. It could turn out that she wasn't intending to kill him, but in her attempt to flee, she did put his life at risk. You know, apparently he is in the hospital for internal bleeding from when her car hit him. Either way, that determination will be made by all the gathered evidence and trained use of force experts. So today's podcast is not about litigating that question. What I want to look at with you today is how we got here and the horrors of what happened after. You know, within hours of this incident, blame had been assigned, right? Opinions had hardened along tribal lines. Social media became a courtroom. Blue team, ICE agent equals thug, Nazi, Gestapo, rabid killer. Red team, Renee Goode equals vigilante, domestic terrorist, cop killer. Both sides immediately got GoFundMe campaigns. And then the smear campaigns began. She lost custody of two of her kids. He's a fanatical MAGA, part of Trump's secret police. And as I mentioned, none of this matters legally. None of it. Not their politics, not their personalities, not their custody arrangements, not the fact that Ross called Goode a bad name. You know, these facts, they're brought up to reduce these people, no pun intended, to good or bad, victim and victimizer. Because it's easier to take a side if there's no gray area. You know, when something shocking or tragic happens, especially something violent, we're suddenly flooded with emotion, you know, sadness, fear, anger, confusion, helplessness. It's a hell of a lot to hold all at once, especially when we're being confronted with these kinds of issues constantly. And when emotional stress gets that intense, the mind naturally looks for relief. And one of the quickest ways it finds is by simplifying the story. We collapse complexity into black and white, good and evil, victim and villain, us, them. And that kind of clarity feels stabilizing because it gives us something solid to stand on when everything else feels chaotic, right? If somebody becomes all bad, you don't have to grieve for them. You don't have to sit with sadness. You don't have to hold conflicting emotions at the same time. If Renee Goode is framed as dumb and dangerous, then her death doesn't have to be mourned. It becomes a cautionary tale, and that softens the sadness. Conflict disappears. And on the other side, if Officer Ross is framed as a monster and a thug and a psycho, an inhuman force, then there's no need to wrestle with the harder questions. There's no need to wonder whether rhetoric escalated risk. There's no need to examine whether encouragement to defy law enforcement played a role. The story's clean. He was bad, that's what happened. Clean stories, they feel safer, but they're not true. And it's important to say this clearly. Falling into black and white thinking doesn't make you cruel. It makes you human. When identity and moral certainty feels threatened, people instinctively protect themselves. Simplifying the story preserves the sense that we are on the right side, and it spares us from deeper emotional tension. But the cost of erasing complexity is insanely high. When we can't sit with emotional discomfort, we stop seeing each other as human beings, and we start reducing each other to symbols. Pain hardens us. Empathy collapses, and we turn on one another instead of reckoning with what actually happened. It is okay to say this is tragic without immediately deciding who deserves blame. We can hold empathy without excusing behavior. We can tolerate uncertainty long enough for the truth to emerge. You're allowed to let more than one thing be true at the same time. Ross and Goode were declared cold-blooded killers by one half of the country or the other. They're not. Jonathan Ross is a war veteran. He worked for the Department of Homeland Security for over a decade. He earned the Army Commendation Medal, the Army Good Conduct Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Medal, the Iraq Campaign Medal, amongst others. He is highly decorated. After returning home as a combat veteran, he joined U.S. Border Patrol in El Paso in Texas in 2007. He worked under Obama until 2015 as a field intelligence agent, gathering and analyzing information on drug cartels and human traffickers. In 2015, he joined ICE as a deportation officer based in Minnesota. Now, his job, as he testified in a recent case, was to identify and arrest higher value targets. Okay, not the guy that plays in the mariachi band, not the guy who operates your favorite food truck. Terrorists. He also testified that he was a member of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. He served as a field intelligence officer, and his work involved investigating organized crime and national security threats. He's a father, he's a husband, and he quite literally was the guy taking really bad guys off the street. Again, I say, not the sweet guy who runs your favorite taco truck, thieves, rapists, murderers, traffickers, arsonists. Now, who was Renee Goode? Renee was an award-winning poet. She was a guitar enthusiast. She was a mother of 3. She was a wife. She served on the school board. She held several jobs over the course of her life as a dental assistant, an English teacher. At one point, she started a business called Be Good Handiwork. Her family describes her as loving, compassionate, kind, a beautiful light. Neither woke up that morning wanting their day to end in death. Both of these people believed that they were serving their country in the way that their belief systems taught them to. Ross dedicated his life to pursuing violent criminals and protecting national security. Renee Goode believed that she was standing against an existential threat to her country. Now, whether you agree with her beliefs is irrelevant. There's no question that she believed them. And that matters. Whether she was a paid protester or agitator, there is still no question she was ideologically captured. Nobody puts their life at risk for what rumor has it is $20 an hour. Okay. Former reports that agitators were paid $1,500 a day have been debunked, guys. Now, having said that, there are absolutely real villains here, but they aren't Ross or Goode. Goode believed that she was doing something righteous. She was encouraged by activists and leaders who framed law enforcement not as human beings operating inside a legal system, but as embodiments of oppression itself that has to be resisted at all costs. She believed that she was standing against evil. Let me read you just a few quotes from Democratic politicians, okay? Let's take a look here. We're going to start with Governor Tim Walz. Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the street. They're in unmarked vans wearing masks being shipped off to foreign torture dungeons. No chance to mount a defense. Not even a chance to kiss loved ones goodbye. Just grabbed up by masked agents and shoved into those vans and disappeared. Stephen Lynch, Democrat. When you compare the old films of the Gestapo grabbing people up off the streets of Poland and you compare those to the nondescript thugs, it looks like a Gestapo operation. John Larson, Democrat, referred to ICE as the SS and the Gestapo in relation to arresting individuals. Robin Kelly, Democrat, smeared ICE as the Gestapo and a betrayal of Americans. Dan Goldman, Democrat, compared ICE to the secret police. Seth Moulton compared ICE to Adolf Hitler's secret police, also a Democrat, of course. Governor Gavin Newsom. We refuse to be bullied by these secret police tactics, and we'll keep standing up for Californians against this administration's dangerous actions. Pritzker, we could be here all day. I'm going to give you a few more. Pritzker, Democrat, compared Trump's administration's use of ICE to what authoritarian regimes do. This list goes on and on and on. Democratic congressmen, Democratic senators, Democratic governors, Democratic mayors, Democratic police chiefs telling ICE that if they do their job, she's going to arrest them, and then threatens ICE officers, you don't want this smoke.
I call them made-up, fake, wannabe law enforcement, because what they do is against not only legal law, but the moral law. If any of them want to come in this city and commit a crime, you will not be able to hide. Nobody will wish you off. You don't want this smoke, because we will bring it to you. The criminal in the White House would not be able to keep you from going to jail.
Renee Goode thought that she was legally allowed to impede federal law enforcement operations. Okay? As I said, police chiefs told ICE they would arrest them. Mayors told ICE they wouldn't cooperate. Governors told people to resist and fight back. She was told that stepping into harm's way was a moral courage and a white person's obligation to join her brothers and sisters of color. Just take a look at what Joy Reid had to say.
This woman was part of a group of people who they train to try to be ICE interrupters. Mm-hmm. And what they try to do is observe what ICE is doing, film them, and try to use their white privilege, to be honest. They're mainly white people.
Which is what we ask.
Which is what we ask them to do, right? Because black people, like, we can't put our bodies on the line because cops will shoot us. And so the presumption had been, particularly a white woman, because remember, part of the rationale for doing this with ICE is to save white women, pristine white women, from being ravaged by, criminal brown men. So white women, have been taking the lead.
Okay. They did shoot her, Joy, which kind of puts a hole in your racist law enforcement position. But nevertheless, she was told that history would vindicate her. And here's what's worse. The people pushing this narrative, they don't believe it. They know better. Democratic leaders, political podcasters, and pundits, they're not ignorant. Joy Reid went to Harvard. They're highly educated. They know the law. They know Officer Ross was enforcing federal law enacted by Congress. They know that resisting federal law enforcement, spitting on officers, hurling objects at them or their vehicles, verbally assaulting them, blocking them in, it's illegal. They know it is exceptionally dangerous. They know if you oppose a law enforcement officer, you will get hurt. The remedy, if you oppose a law, is to change that law through legislation, not to attack the people tasked with enforcing it. It's the rhetoric for clicks and the propaganda for power that turns a 37-year-old mom into a soldier of a moral war. And this is the evil bullshit that gets a 37-year-old mom killed. And I'll do you one worse. If you're a boomer, if you're Gen X, if you're millennial, you should remember the endless speeches by Obama, Bill and Hillary Clinton, Pelosi, all talking about how we have to enforce immigration laws. Take a look.
If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up. The actions I'm taking are not only lawful, they're the kinds of actions taken by every single Republican president and every single Democratic president for the past half century.
I think we got to have tough conditions. Tell people to come out of the shadows. If they've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked. They're gone.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens. In the budget I will present to you, we will try to do more to speed the deportation of illegal aliens who are arrested for crimes, to better identify illegal aliens in the workplace as recommended by the commission headed by former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws. It is wrong and ultimately self-defeating for a nation of immigrants to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we have seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it.
Team, it's 2026. It's a new year, and I don't know about you, but I definitely want a fresh wardrobe. And Quince is my go-to for luxurious, high-quality essentials that feel effortless, look polished, and actually last. I love adding new Quince pieces to my wardrobe each season. You've heard me rave about their Mongolian cashmere sweaters. They're soft, they're buttery, they're frankly superior to the ones I paid triple for elsewhere. And their Italian wool coats are sleek, tailored, cozy. And now I'm eyeing a new Quince leather jacket for an edgy look for those chilly spring evenings. Quince pieces are ideal for mixing and layering season after season. But here's the best part. Quince sells directly to the consumer, no middleman, so no markup. Timeless quality pieces for such an amazing price. And yes, their luxe bath towels and silk pillowcases are also game changers for the home. Quince delivers premium quality at honest prices. So refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Don't wait. Go to quince.com/Jillian for free shipping on your order on 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/Jillian to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Jillian. Bill Clinton, he deported or returned 12 million people. Obama deported and returned 5 million people. Trump is not even at 1.5 million. And no, they didn't all get due process. In fact, Bill Clinton worked with a Republican Congress to pass a law that deprived anyone within 100 miles of any U.S. border who'd been in the country less than 14 days a courtroom. Obama expanded that law. So for everyone who's mad about Alligator Alcatraz, let's also not forget that Obama was the one who built the cages at the border. The reason that you weren't seeing ICE agent raids all over the news back then is because sanctuary cities did not exist. Local law enforcement cooperated with federal law enforcement. They held criminals for ICE to pick up. They didn't release them. They didn't tell people that ICE were Trump's private army who was zip tying children. Also a lie. And guess what? ICE didn't have to wear masks. They wore street clothes. They didn't need to wear riot gear. No riot gear. Wake up. You're being manipulated. The same people who are now calling enforcement fascism built the enforcement system. If you oppose the law, the remedy is legislation, not mob confrontation, not street-level violence. Attacking federal officers is illegal and it is dangerous, period. And it does nothing to change policy. Officer Ross was not hunting activists. ICE agents enforce federal immigration law passed by Congress, not invented by presidents, not invented by Trump. And as I mentioned, Ross spent the majority of his tenure at DHS and ICE working under Obama and Biden. Ross specifically was tasked with pursuing the most violent offenders. I will say it again. Drug traffickers, human traffickers, fraud networks. Over the past year, ICE officers have been assaulted, spit on, doxxed, and threatened. Ross had just recently been hospitalized after being dragged 300 feet by a car driven by a criminal who was in the country illegally. Cartels have put bounties on ICE agents' heads. Their families are targeted when their identities are exposed. This is why agents are wearing masks. Criminals wear masks to escape accountability. ICE officers wear masks because anonymity is survival, and that distinction matters. To the Hollywood actors calling Trump a dictator and a rogue actor, Trump was democratically elected. The majority that voted for him wants borders closed for national security. They want their tax dollars going towards citizens that pay tax, not undocumented immigrants who don't. They don't want black market economies that pay people less than a fair wage so they can have cheaper avocado toast. Now, where the Republicans failed was tone, timing, and humanity. Too many rushed to declare Renee Goode a villain before facts were known. Too many spoke with certainty where there was still uncertainty. Too many treated her death like a cautionary tale instead of a human tragedy. Worse, the handling of the investigation looks less like law and order and more like a cover-up. When 10 senior federal prosecutors resign in protest because Washington ordered them to investigate the dead victims' activist ties while blocking a simultaneous investigation into the agent's use of force, you lose the moral high ground. When the FBI seizes control specifically to freeze out local state investigators, it signals that you're afraid of what the evidence might show. And while ICE agents are enforcing federal law, there is no question this strategy is losing in the court of public opinion. A perfect example being Rogan's viral clip calling ICE the Gestapo.
To watch someone shoot a U.S. citizen, especially a woman, in the face, you can also see the point of view of the people that say, yeah, but you don't want militarized people in the streets just roaming around, snatching people up, many of which turn out to actually be U.S. citizens that just don't have their papers on them. Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers?
But it's not just Rogan. Many conservatives are uneasy watching this level of force. Many know undocumented immigrants personally, and while they want immigrants off social services, they want the end of shadow economies created by illegal labor, they want criminals out of the country, they are also open to immigration reform. In the court of public opinion, perception matters more than righteousness. Right or wrong becomes secondary to how people experience what they see. It's time to stop beating our chests and come to the table. Recently, bipartisan legislation has been proposed by Representative Maria Elvira Salazar, who's a Republican from Florida, and Representative Veronica Escobar, who's a Democrat from Texas, and it's called the Dignity Act. Take a look.
No more need to choose between amnesty or deportation. Dignity Bill is the answer. And here's how it works. If you are undocumented and you have been in the country for more than 5 years, you do not have a criminal record, you're working and paying taxes, you can come out of the shadows with no fear and apply for the dignity status. That means they will pay a fine of $7,000 over 7 years, buy their own health insurance with no access to any federal programs, and contribute 1% of their salary to the United States Treasury. That is $50 billion plus. Just do the math. In return, they will never be deported. They will be able to go home for Christmas or to go bury their mother and come back to the United States to continue working and paying taxes. It gives them a dignified life in the promised land, period.
The response from conservatives has been good. Now, who among you watching that could get behind it? Personally, with President Trump, I've actually been pretty impressed, guys. The border's closed. Fentanyl deaths have dropped dramatically. Children are no longer being trafficked across our border by cartels. Gas is the lowest it's been in years. Markets are at the highest. He's talking about stopping Wall Street from swallowing up single-family homes. Maduro was captured without a single American life lost. Iran's nuclear capability was dismantled in days, not decades. There's a peace deal in Gaza. Tariffs didn't crash the economy and are now reshoring thousands of American jobs instead. I mean, what Trump and Kennedy are doing with Maha, that's awesome. Lower drug prices, fewer chemicals in our food, a ban on sex changes for minors. I mean, those are just a few of his real wins. But on this issue, whether it's legal or not, something has to change. People on all sides are getting hurt. We need to look at proposals like the Dignity Bill. We need to put more judges at the border so cases can be adjudicated more quickly and lawfully. We have to give people who love America and want to contribute a real process and make them earn it. We need to fix our asylum courts so those who are fleeing real prosecution have a chance and those abusing the system are removed swiftly. And if Democrats make reform impossible and push back to keep immigration as a political football, it doesn't weaken Republicans, it insulates them. It gives them more cover to enforce the law as written. Point to obstruction and say plainly, hey, we're at the negotiating table waiting for them to show up. Ultimately, though, this doesn't just sit with politicians or pundits. It sits with us, with you and me, with how we choose to see one another, as humans or as props in a political war. There's value in restraint. There's value in acknowledging that real people exist inside these moments. Not racists, not killers, not fascists, and not terrorists. Renee Goode and Jonathan Ross were not abstractions. They were people that were caught in a system that rewards escalation and outrage and certainty instead of judgment, critical thinking, and care. If you really love this country and you want to see real change, whether you're Democrat or Republican, consider supporting policy reform because that is the only way forward. All right, guys, we'll be right back with a totally unrelated topic. Oprah is out there telling everybody that obesity is genetic, and I am pissed. Please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It helps me out a ton with the algorithm. Channel the fresh start energy of the new year and finally launch your business. 2026 is the year you rewrite your story. You own your future, and you make your entrepreneurial dreams come true. Start your business with Shopify in 2026 and become who you're meant to be. My wife actually just started a Shopify account for her clothing company because Shopify gives you everything you need to sell online and in person. Millions of entrepreneurs have already made this leap, from household names to first-time business owners just getting started. Shopify gives you all the tools to easily build your dream store. You can choose from hundreds of beautiful templates that you can customize to match your brand. Setup is fast with Shopify's built-in AI tools, the right product descriptions and headlines, and to help you edit product photos. Marketing is built in as well. You can create email and social media campaigns that reach customers wherever they scroll. And as you grow, Shopify grows with you. Handle more orders and expand to new markets and do it all from the same dashboard. So in 2026, stop waiting and start selling with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Jillian. Just go to shopify.com/Jillian. That's shopify.com/Jillian. And hear your first this new year with Shopify by your side. Hey ladies, it's Jillian here. And let's just say that when it comes to intimate wear, the struggle is real. For many of us, bras and underwear are just afterthoughts. Basic, uncomfortable, and honestly, underwhelming. And for years, I'd focus on my outfits, thinking the right top or the right pants would make me feel great, but Skims has flipped that script. Now, the foundation pieces I put on first set the tone for my wardrobe. Confidence and comfort all day long. The Fits Everybody Scoop bralette is just what it says. It fits every body type, and it's a game changer. It's supportive, it's comfortable, and even if you have a bigger bust, which I unfortunately do not, but even if you do, it feels like a perfect fit, not a constricting sports bra. Skims is just designed differently. Quality fabrics, quality construction, soft and seamless support. You feel secure, lifted, and still totally natural. No digging, no adjusting. Skims is now just a wardrobe essential for me, and I'm sure it will be for you too. So you can shop my favorite bras and underwear at skims.com/Jillian. And after you place your order, please be sure to let them know that we sent you. Select podcast in the survey and be sure to select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. All right, guys, we're back, and Oprah is back in the news. God, I wish she would stay in her lane. Take a look.
But I was overeating. I was standing there with all the food noise, what I ate, what I should eat, how many calories was that, how long is it going to take. I thought that was because of me and my fault. Yeah. Now I understand that if you carry the obesity gene, if that is what you have, that is what makes you overeat. You don't overeat and become obese. Right. Obesity causes you to overeat.
Oh my God. Okay. So Oprah is making the rounds because she has released a new book about weight loss medications that she co-wrote with Dr. I'm going to butcher this and I'm sorry, Ania Jastreboff. So let's talk about Dr. Ania. Bottom line is this woman is intimately involved in researching, testing, and advocating for these weight loss drugs. She works for the drug companies who make these weight loss drugs. So I bring this up not because she's some sort of devil. She's potentially doing God's work, right? If you're 400 pounds and you have advanced heart disease and type 2 diabetes, and there are solutions like this out there for you that you can speak with your doctor about, that's wonderful. But what I'm pointing out, number one, is the inherent conflict of interest. On top of that, Oprah has a very complicated financial entanglement with these medications. She was previously one of the top shareholders of Weight Watchers, who purchased a telehealth medicine company called Sequence that sold these GLP-1 drugs. And then she famously did this episode on her, I don't know what the heck show she's got nowadays, some show where she pretended to be, mind boggled about weight loss drugs, knowing that this was time to release after Weight Watchers, which she was a top shareholder of, purchased Sequence. And then when she was critiqued to all hell, being one of those people pointing those things out, she divested and was like, I'm going to donate my shares. Well, after you made hundreds of millions of dollars, homie, after you did the ginormous cash out, do you not have enough money, girl? If it's not Maui, it's this. But we'll get back to that in a minute. Let's talk about obesity for a second. So I have a lot of notes here, and I don't want to forget to talk to you about any of it. First thing, is what she said scientifically true? No, it's not. Let's begin with what is fat. Not what does fat do in the body. That's a completely separate conversation. But essentially, for our intents and purposes right now, fat is stored energy, okay? A calorie is a unit of energy. So food has calories. Now, if I said to you, what weighs more, a pound of feathers or a pound of diamonds? A pound is a pound. A calorie is a calorie. A calorie in an avocado is the same amount of energy as a calorie in a Twinkie. Now, if I said what's more valuable, you would say the diamonds, right? Well, same thing, the avocado over the Twinkie, but that's because what accompanies it is nutrients versus anti-nutrients. So the avocado has vitamins and minerals, and it has macronutrients, right? It has fiber, it has fat, all the things. And the Twinkie has nothing but garbage in it. It has anti-nutrients. So where health and weight intersect, because you could be skinny, by the way, and exceptionally unhealthy. And that just means that as a skinny person, you're eating less Twinkies, or you have a faster metabolism. But as I said, skinny people get type 2 diabetes and heart disease and all the things. So when it comes to big or smaller, there is no question that it is about eating too many calories. Now, Oprah doesn't actually try to deny that. She's like, well, I ate too many calories because I have a gene that says eat calories. That's a lie. And we'll get to that in a second. There are numerous genetic markers for obesity. I have 4 of them. Take a look. Now, despite having 4 genetic markers for obesity and heart disease, I am not obese and I don't have heart disease. Why? Because genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. So what that means is that while my son and my wife can eat whatever they want and not gain weight, I cannot. And I have to function in a lower calorie allowance. Let's get back to calorie allowance for a second. This is not a question. It is the first law of thermodynamics. Energy, in this case calories, and fat is stored energy. That's what fat is. When you consume calories that you do not burn in a day, they get stored in your fat cells as fat. Calories in, calories out. Energy is not created or destroyed in a vacuum, a closed system. Your body is not a closed system. You take energy in. When you have an energy call through activity, you burn stored fat. Okay, that's how this works. It's calories in, calories out. Having said that, if we go back to the 1970s, if we were to make the argument, oh, Jill's wrong, it's genetics. Where was obesity back in the 1970s? It was at 5% of adult Americans. Now it's at 74%. 74% of adult Americans are obese or overweight. But in the 70s, it was 5%. And childhood diabetes, type 2 diabetes, it was actually called adult onset diabetes. We changed it to type 2 diabetes because kids started getting diabetes. There was no childhood obesity. It didn't exist. No one tracked it because it wasn't a thing. So genetics evolve over thousands of years, not over 5 decades. That would be a quantum leap for genetics. If you want to look at what happened, there's no question that the explosion of Americans' waistlines and chronic diseases, because obesity is associated with 170 different comorbidities, from erectile dysfunction, cognitive decline, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, the list is long and it's extensive. Well, what happened? You had an explosion of ultra-processed foods. Now, people like my mom, who are boomers, they're like, well, I ate processed foods too. Not the same. Her version of ketchup, yeah, it's processed, mostly sugar, had 4 ingredients. Our ketchup today has 25. It has a host of chemicals that do disrupt your metabolic function. And I'll talk about big food in just a second. It's loaded with calories. But what these ultra-processed foods do, they don't just make us sick because of all the garbage in them. They are designed to make us overeat. If we're looking for a villain, it is not your genetics. It's big food. Now, here's the thing. As I said, some of us can eat whatever we want and not gain weight. Arguably, those are the people who are outliers. Those of us who can't eat whatever we want without gaining weight, that just means that you're genetically efficient. Because the reality is that as we evolved as human beings, there were periods of feast and periods of famine. So people who are more efficient at storing fat had ancestors that went through more periods of famine. You can even see this in the indigenous population of the Pima Indians, for example. Or when you look at the descendants of the Great Potato Famine, they have slower metabolisms. But what that means is they've just become more proficient at fat storage for periods of famine. But we don't have periods of famine anymore. We have pizza and burgers and fries on every corner, okay? Donut shops. When you look at the true villain, if we were to indict someone, it would absolutely be big food. And I'm not asking you to check your personal accountability at the door. Quite the opposite. But there is no question the system is rigged against you. These big food companies, they were bought by Big Tobacco in the early 1980s because tobacco was actually in free fall. It was working. The campaign against big tobacco, far less people were smoking. And it caused the Philip Morrises of the world to buy the big food companies of the world and bring their playbook over to big food. They brought their team of multidisciplinary scientists. And just to give you one example, they engineered something called the bliss point. So this was the perfect ratio of salt, sugar, and fat that would create a state of bliss in your brain. One thing of a million things these guys did. How many times does the chip crunch? I mean, it's insane. All of the different things they did. I mean, your food is a science experiment. With this ultra-processed food, it's not food. But the design is to get you to eat more because it's profitable. That's the point. You've heard me say that you can't eat just one. It's not a slogan. It's a business model. So you're set up to fail. The food is hyper palatable and it blunts your satiety hormones. So what's going to make somebody eat more or eat less? Your satiety hormones are supposed to say, yo, you're full. So we'll get to what the weight loss drugs are in a minute, but essentially they're mimetics of peptides and weight loss hormones. Think about GLP-1 is not a weight loss hormone, is a satiety hormone, okay? So does the body not make GLP-1? That's what's in Ozempic. It's a replica of GLP-1. Of course we do. And what happened? Everybody's obese because we've had a GLP-1 shortage? No, that's not what happened. There was no GLP-1. There were no weight loss drugs in the 70s. When you eat whole foods, protein, fat, fiber, the body releases GLP-1, leptin, GIP, all of these different satiety hormones to say, hey, you're good. Stop eating, okay? Now, when you eat something like a soda or a Dorito, there's no fiber, there's no protein, there's no healthy fat in these foods. So not only are they not triggering the release of satiety hormones, they actually have so much sugar in them that the sugar gets dumped into your bloodstream and then your pancreas goes, oh my God, what do we do? And it releases a ton of insulin. Insulin's job is to get the sugar out of the blood and into the cells, right? And this is how you become insulin resistant, because over time, your body dumps so much insulin and the cells are like, nope, we're full, all done. And it keeps pumping out insulin, trying to hack the system. But that's a different conversation. So when you dump all this insulin and you scrape all that sugar out of the blood so quickly, you now have low blood sugar again, and you're hungry again. Just, again, one more mechanism to show you the ways in which these ultra-processed foods trigger overeating. Now let's look at the drugs for a second. I mentioned that they're mimetics of satiety hormones. So let's leave out retatrutide. Maybe you've heard about this one. This is a new triple agonist weight loss drug that people are selling on the gray market. I don't want to get into that one. That is a real can of worms. But if we look at Ozempic, or you look at tirzepatide, Wegovy, you've got GLP-1 and GIP. What do these drugs do to facilitate weight loss? They help you eat less food. We're back to the conversation here of calories in, calories out. That's the mechanism by which they facilitate weight loss. Now, there's obviously some anecdotal concerns with this as well. You know, when food sits in your gut, there's unquestionably a relationship to things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Is it messing up your microbiome? Conversation for a different day. The second mechanism that these drugs work on is the pleasure center of your brain, which is why some people, there's anecdotal reports of suicidal ideation, a general malaise. Because think about it, if they're dampening that pleasure center in your brain, they work well on addiction, in particular food addiction, the food noise we're talking about, but they can also cause, in some people, reports of depression, for example. Now, what they do is they essentially block big food from establishing that bliss point. I mean, great, I guess. So here's the question. When you have to have a pharmacological solution to an external problem, to chemical experiments with our food that cause us to overeat, we're never really getting to the root of the issue. What bothers me about what Oprah is saying is that she's exploiting your vulnerability and your psychology. Because people do feel ashamed when they're overweight. They shouldn't, but they do. There are a host of psychological issues associated with obesity. People utilize food as a defense structure, a coping mechanism. I've given this example many times in the past, but it's the most obvious. If you're a sexual abuse survivor, maybe you're overeating to desexualize and put on a layer of protection, right? Now, you're not aware of it, but arguably that's one of the reasons people unconsciously overeat who've been assaulted. So if you're telling people, hey, listen, I know you feel ashamed, I know you feel powerless, it's not you, you're genetically screwed, you've A, disempowered them, you've B, let big food off the hook and the solutions that we need to find with regard to the nefarious actions those companies are engaged in, and you've totally negated the psychological piece of this, where many people who are obese need help. If you want to take these drugs, by all means, it's your body. Do what you feel is right for you. But it's imperative that you go into this with the understanding of how the body works, the fact that you are not genetically sentenced to obesity and disease. That is not true. That's a lie. That what's really messing you up and throwing you off are the ultra-processed foods. You are addicted to ultra-processed foods. So if you want to blame someone, that's definitely one of the culprits right there. And that would be one of the first things that you should tackle. If there's psychological trauma, you might want to get counseling. You might want to seek psychedelic therapy. I've heard incredible things about people utilizing psychedelic therapy for their overeating addiction. These drugs have side effects. They need to be done under a doctor's supervision. And understanding the science is an absolute imperative. So having said all of that, zero judgment here. Just want to make sure you go into these choices with your eyes wide open.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And make sure to let me know what guests you want to see on in the future.